What a difference in size the fish makes after a few months. Absolutely beautiful fish. Hi guys, and welcome back to Piscator UK. Well guys, I'm back on the shore and I thought I would do another mackerel fishing video on the back of my first mackerel fishing video. Although that video got a lot of positive feedback, it did get some negative feedback. Now, some of the comments were I made it look too easy, I was showing off, and they didn't learn nothing from the video, which was not my intentions. And because of those comments, I do sometimes forget that total novices, you know, watch my videos, and you know, just because I have a YouTube channel doesn't mean that I'm an expert, and I'm no expert, and I've never claimed to be an expert on any of the fishing that I do. I just like to show how I fish, and you know, you sometimes forget that YouTube influences others, shall we say, and you know, what you say they think is gospel, especially when it comes to beginners. So I thought I would do another video on the back of that video, just to explain what I'm doing a little bit more, what my setup is, etc. Now, it is a bit misty today, you probably can't see the background very good, but I am at the same venue that I did that first video on. And the reason that I chose that venue in the first place is it's away from other anglers. Now, many anglers would bypass this venue because they think it's too shallow or it's too difficult to fish. But with a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of experience, I can fish this type of venue no problem, and hopefully I can give you some of those tips on choosing a venue. So I do like to stay away from other anglers, you know, some of the more populated venues, you know, they're too busy, and I just don't like people, how they treat the area. You know, they'll discard fishing line and other rubbish, and that just really annoys me. So I just try and stay away from the heavy populated fishing areas. Now, these areas are popular for a reason, and that's because they're easier to fish and you're pretty much into deep water, you know, at your feet. So as I said, this venue is not like that. This venue is a gradual slope. It looks shallow close in, and it is shallow close in, but further out at your casted distance, that's when you hit deep water, and that's where the mackerel are going to be. Now, I get a lot of questions on what I look for in a venue, and I do look for deep water. Deep water is my target, but it doesn't necessarily need to be deep at my feet. You know, as long as I can cast into deep water and there's mackerel there, you should catch them. So I'll explain a little bit as well how I'm fishing in this type of venue. And you know, I also got questions like where am I fishing? Like they want the exact postcode of where I'm fishing. Now, when the mackerel are in, it doesn't matter where you go really on the coast. If the mackerel are there, you'll catch them. Now, I could fish all along this coastal stretch and I would catch mackerel if they're there. So, you know, you don't need the exact spot, and it's worthwhile just doing a little bit of homework, looking for areas. Now, I use a couple of apps to find areas. One of them is Google Maps or Google Earth even. But one app I like to use, which is free to those in the UK, is Navionics Boating. Now, I say it is free and you do get the basic apps, but it tells you the depths of water around the coastline within the UK and on some freshwater venues as well. It's a brilliant app to use. It shows you the contours, it shows you the low tide marks, and it's an app that's really worthwhile using. So let's go on, I'll show you what I'm using again. So I'm using my 11-foot spinning rod, and this is called a Rovex Captive. Now, I don't even think they make these particular models anymore. This rod's probably 25 years old, and it's rated 20 to 60 grams. I can use 90 grams in this rod very carefully, which is 3-ounce weight, but today I'm just going to use what it's rated to. I'm going to use a 2-ounce 60 gram weight. and I've got a 4000 size reel. This is a Penn Battle 2. It's perfect for sea fishing. It's got seal drag, and yeah, it holds up to the elements of sea fishing very well. Now 4000 is the biggest reel I would go to for this type of fishing. I don't like big bulky reels, so 4000 suits this rod as well perfectly. I've got that loaded with 40-pound braid. So why would I use braid rather than mono? Braid will enable you to cast further. Quite simply, it's lighter, it's thinner than diameter than mono. Does have a couple of drawbacks. One, it is really expensive compared to mono. It's probably 6 times more expensive than mono, but it will enable you to cast further. I like braid for a number of reasons, but that is the main reason I like to use it, is casting distance. So the 40-pound braid is my main line. Goes all the way through to a 30-pound mono leader, and I like mono as a leader just to give a bit of protection during casting for the braid. Braid can have a tendency to wrap around your top eye when you're casting, and it just gives a little bit of abrasion resistance to your braid and protects it. And I attach the mono using an FG knot. Now I'll leave a link of all my knots that I use in the description, and you can go and check those out. There's other knots out there for joining braid to mono. I like the FG knot because it is super thin in diameter and it doesn't rattle through the rod guides when you're casting. And I've got approximately 12 foot of mono shock leader, and that just goes on to a little snap swivel tied on using a uni knot. And like I said, I'll put all my knots that I use in the description. Once you've got your snap swivel on, then you can attach that to whatever you're using. Whatever you're using, whether it be a trace of feathers like I'm using today, or lures. We'll call them feathers, they're mackerel feathers, that's what they're supposed to imitate. Or you can attach that to a lure. The mackerel feathers I'm using are just these silver flashers. There's 4 in a trace, yeah, and there's a loop at either end. Now, it doesn't really matter which way you put these on. I like to fish these upside down. Most people fish them like that, and you can notice that the feathers are pointing down the way, but I like to fish them upside down because they're more standoffish from the main body, which stops more the lures wrapping round as you're working them in the water. So I like to fish them upside down, and I would do that the same whether I fish hawkeyes, etc. So there's a loop at either end of the ready-made trace, and for mackerel fishing from the shore I just tend to use a trace that has 4 mackerel feathers rather than 5 or 6. I just think it's much more manageable, especially in areas like this. There is a bit of weed close to the shore and you can just lift the fish above it. So connecting the top eye of the mackerel feathers to my snap swivel, like so. And the other end is going to my 2 ounce or 60 gram bomb weight. Now with the other loop on the end, I just thread that through the eye of the bomb, and you can pull that knot through the eye of the bomb so you can get over the weight. Put the loop over the bomb, pull the knot back through the eye, and that's looped onto the eye of the bomb now, ready to fish. Now in the first video I did say that this method is my go-to method when I want to catch mackerel quickly. I just want a few for dinner or a few for bait, and that's all I'm going to do today and just show you that. Hopefully there's some mackerel here. It is the first week in September and I reckon the mackerel will be around in numbers up until the end of September, and then they'll start dwindling away. Unless we get some really hot weather, it might keep them hanging around for a little bit longer. Now just because I got fish here the last time doesn't mean there's going to be fish here today, and that's the thing with mackerel fishing. Mackerel, they follow the bait, and if there's no bait fish, there's quite honestly no mackerel. Now I've not put a line out yet, so I don't know if there's any mackerel here. So let's see if there's any mackerel about and we'll get some fishing done. So guys, like I said, this venue is quite shallow, close to shore. Now there is a lot of weed in the water at the moment. I can see it all over. So it's a case of trying to avoid the weed where possible. And this is just floating weed that's been caught in the tide. As you can see, I've got wellies on and I'm wading into the water halfway up my wellies, and you can see the bottom quite clear. But this venue is shallow, close to shore, and then it shelves off deeply, probably to 30 or 40 feet, and that's my target area, is the deep water. Now even if it was high tide, it'd obviously take a longer cast to get into the deeper water. The tide's actually on its way out at the moment, and I much rather fish an incoming tide. I think incoming tides bring in fresh fish, but the tide's going out at the moment. It's low tide in 2 hours time, but I do think there'll be fish here, fingers crossed. So I've just got my line in my finger, ready to cast. I pick my target, which is in between some floating weed, and I cast as far as that weight will allow me to cast. I'm going to let that sink for about 6 seconds, something like that, and then all I'm doing is just winding and jigging. So I'm nowhere near the bottom at the moment. I'm just searching the area out, trying to find the fish, hopefully. So I'm just jigging and winding. If I let that weight go all the way to the bottom, when I'm jigging and winding it on its way in, I'm more likely to catch that shelf as it deepens off. Now someone coming here for the first time, that's what they would probably do. They would probably let the line sink or let the weight sink too long, probably until it hits the bottom, and as they are winding and jigging, they're going to get caught in that shelf, and that's what will make people lose tackle and they'll pack up early. Now this mist should burn off before I finish. I'm only going to give this an hour or so. So why do I prefer an 11-foot rod to any other rod? Well, 10 or 11 foot is what I would go for this type of fishing. Having a longer rod, it lets you cast further. Quite basically, it lets you cast a little bit further than a shorter rod. Because of the length as well, when I do come into shallower water, I can lift my rod up high and it helps me clear any snags a little bit better than a little dinky short rod like 6 foot, 7 foot. And coupled with the braid on the reel, that lets you cast as far as you possibly can. And what I do is I tend to cast as far as I can with every cast. What does this help me do? It helps me cover more water, and it helps me cover different depths to where the fish might be. Quite simply, that's why I like the longer rod and I like fishing with braid, is for the distance and what that distance allows you to do. Now if you're fishing off a mark that's deep at your feet, whether you're on a pier, a breakwater, you know, a harbour wall or something like that, and you've got deep water at your feet, then yes, you will get away with using a short rod. But if you buy a short rod just for mackerel fishing, then you're going to be limited to where you can use that rod. You get a long rod to start with. You can still use a long rod if you're fishing into deep water at your feet, or a venue like this, which is quite challenging to fish. If you just had a short rod, then like I said, you're limited to where you can use the short rod. So in this cast, all I'm doing is winding it really slow and jigging at the same time as it's sinking, hopefully trying to locate any fish. Nothing at the moment. I'm not going to let it sink too deep. And that's fish. So it took a little while. I was just finding the depth. And this feels quite heavy. So the fish are either a reasonable size, or there's 4 on it. Two mackerel, but they're decent size. Excellent. Their dinner tonight. What a difference in size a few months make. Brilliant. What a beautiful size these mackerel are. What a difference in size the fish makes after a few months. Absolutely beautiful fish. Now guys, I am going to show you how to dispatch this fish quickly, and it's the most effective way to dispatch a mackerel. If you're a bit squeamish, then look away now. Put your finger in its mouth, okay, and snap the head all the way back, and that's the fish totally dead. Yeah, no shivering, no quivering, the fish is dead. Just one more, so look away now if you're squeamish. Finger in the mouth, put your thumb behind its head, snap all the way back, totally dead, okay? Let's see if we can get a couple more, and that'll be me done for the session. Have a few fish for tea. And we're in, guys. Feel like nice fish. Let's hope they are. Yeah, another couple. Not as big as the other ones. Lovely. I'm just going to let these guys go. An easiest way is just to shake them off the hook without actually touching them. There is a theory that the fish don't survive once you've touched them, so I'm just shaking it off and away they go. So guys, that brings me to the end of this short session, short video. I hope this video answered many of your questions that I probably failed to answer in my first video. Like I said, this method is a method that I love to use when I just want to catch mackerel quickly for either some bait or, like today, 2 nice mackerel for dinner tonight. Yeah, that's why I like this method. Guys, I would say that you've only got a few weeks left of summer for the mackerel before they start dwindling. There will be a few after that, you know, there'll be a few kicking about, but they won't be here in the numbers like they are at the moment. So get out there guys, get your rods, tight lines, and I'll see you next time on Piscator UK.